there's three parts to today's meeting, which I'm just going to update you on some of the issues that are going on at the moment. We'll then have an intro from the new Director of Park Services, Elliott Lorimer, because a number of staff have demanded it. And then we'll have an update from Rachel Briggs on some of the work that's going on at Aysgarth Falls in relation to the provision of services to the public and to those public who find the park harder to reach or travel around. So we're able to do something there on our own site that's really quite exciting. It was a presentation, or part of that presentation was given to members yesterday at the annual general meeting. Okay, so I'll just kick off with a bit of an update on some of the things that are happening at the moment. So hot off the press, in case some of you haven't heard, is yesterday was the annual general meeting of the National Park Authority, and we have a new chair, Derek Twine. The reason that we've got a new chair, other than he's obviously very good, is there's a convention within the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority that when a chair has done 4 years, 4 terms, although they're elected every year, that's it, that they stand aside. And it was introduced to bring some degree of change in the political leadership of the organisation. So that applies to the chair of the authority. Neil Heseltine has done 4 years, so he stood down from that role, and Derek Twine was elected unopposed unanimously yesterday. We also elected a new deputy chair because Derek was the deputy chair, and we had a competition for that. 2 of the members put their names forward. I've worked here for a while, but there was a situation that occurred yesterday I've never seen before at the National Park Authority, which was that both of the members who put their names forward weren't in the room. One was recovering from surgery. The other one was travelling here, but was held up in traffic for quite a long time. The 2 candidates were Lizzie Bushby, who some of you will have worked with, and Steve Shaw-Wright. Lizzie is a National Secretary of State appointee, and Steve is a appointee from North Yorkshire Council, is the leader of the Labour group at North Yorkshire. And what they both managed to do, although in different ways, was put before members a submission about why they should be supported for the role of deputy. Lizzie managed to type it out on her phone while she was still in some kind of traffic chaos outside the National Park, then sent it to Libby Bateman, who read it out to the meeting. Steve Shaw-Wright had prepared something a little earlier, which was distributed to members. Anyway, there was a vote after those 2 presentations, and Lizzie Bushby was elected as the deputy chair of the National Park Authority, which is great news. Those of you that worked with her will know how enthusiastic and positive she is, and without being sexist about it, I think it's really good that we've got a new face in the political leadership who is a young woman who's got some really good and positive ideas about how the National Park should develop in the future and how the National Park Authority should be managed. So if you get the chance to speak to those over the coming weeks and months, please make them welcome. I think it's worth pointing out, Neil Heseltine just gave a bit of a summary of his 4 years as chair of the National Park. Again, I know many of you will have had the opportunity to work with Neil and to speak with him. I've seen a few chairs in my time here, and we've really had some very, very good chairs of this National Park Authority. Neil's been an outstanding chair in my view. And the way he's pushed the agendas forward around nature recovery, climate adaptation and mitigation, the need to make the park a more welcoming place and to reach out to communities that are really more difficult to reach has been really brilliant. But the reason I wanted to mention what he'd said was that he was at pains to stress just what a fantastic level of support that he'd received over his time as chair from staff right across the National Park Authority and right across the range of our breadth of duties and responsibilities. Brought a tear to my eye actually at the meeting. It really was a quite a wonderful way for him to just acknowledge the contribution of those that he'd worked with. There's a special mention for his two peers, Sam and Susan, but I'll deal with that later. So that was the new chair deputy. We're also undergoing quite a fundamental change in our membership, which means there's a lot of change at some of the senior and committee chairs within the National Park Authority. So just to illustrate that, yesterday was the final meeting for two members who'd served for 8 years, Jim Munday and Neil Swain. Neil was the chair of the Planning Committee, which means that at the next meeting of the Planning Committee, they will be electing a new chair, so change there. Jim Munday was the chair of the Audit Committee, which means at the next meeting there'll be a new chair there. Derek Twine, the new chair of the Authority, was the chair of the Finance Committee, so there'll be a change there. So all three committees will have changes of chairs, and those will be determined at their first meetings following the annual general meeting yesterday. So quite a bit of churn in that area. We've also got the situation that Jim Munday was the member champion for development management, and Derek Twine was the member champion for promoting understanding, and you can't be a member champion and a chair. So at the September meeting of the authority, we will be appointing new member champions in those roles. And just to kind of finalise the member champion issue, we'll also be appointing a new member champion potentially in December to the area of corporate management. Julie Hutton, who's currently got that role, has come to the end of her particular term. Last point on members, we're currently too short. There is supposed to have been a recruitment process to the two new national vacancies that have been created by Jim Munday and Neil Swain leaving. I say supposed to be because we've not had a lot of information or detail about what's been happening there. And then along comes the Prime Minister to announce an election, at which point we've now been told by government that they won't be making appointments to those roles. Indeed, they won't be appointing to any roles across the whole of government until later this year. We'll be lucky if we get any two new appointments in those roles before the end of this calendar year, which is ridiculous and pathetic. We'll be we have made submissions to DEFRA about how inappropriate that is, and we're seeking National Parks England support to add some weight to that, because it applies, as I said, not only to all national park authorities and national landscapes, but to all government bodies right across government. Crackers. Just while we're on the subject of national politics, you're probably aware, I don't know, that there's a general election on the 5th of July. There may be a change of government as a consequence of that election. There have been some consequences for national park authorities because of what is perceived to be an early election. One of the most fundamental is that you may remember at an earlier webinar, I gave an update on the new Levelling Up Act and the fact that new powers were being brought in, which meant that essentially all those bodies that are operating within a national park have to have regard to, not only to have regard to national park purposes, but they've got to seek to pursue and deliver national park purposes. So that went through as part of the Levelling Up Act. We've been waiting for some additional guidance on what that actually means for some time, and we've now been told that that guidance is unlikely to be with us until at the earliest the very end of this year. So what you might say, well, the so what is that all those bodies that are operating in the national park still haven't got the guidance that they think is required to enable them to understand what this new duty actually means for them. And it's having some fairly serious consequences in parts of our work across the national park family and across the national landscapes family, particularly in regard to development management. I'll obviously keep you updated as we get more information on that. There's a lot of work going on, as you might imagine, in National Parks England on the preparation for a new government of whatever colour. Quite a lot of discussion with the opposition at the moment in terms of what plans they might all have for national parks and national park authorities. I have to say the election campaign has seemed a little thin on the ground in terms of both the environment, wider conservation, and the issue of climate, which is a bit unfortunate. I think the only real comment has been around the state of the country's rivers and seas. So that's been a little disappointing. Seemingly still a concentration on the things that are urgent rather than the things that are important. And to be frank, that's not a good long-term strategy, particularly in relation to those areas that impact on us. However, that preparation is taking place. The latest information we've got on things that might affect the national park are officials are putting together a very early what's called a comprehensive spending review. Essentially, that is includes the things that government are going to be spending its money on over the next 3 years. And we're told that planning for the next 3 years is still going on at the moment. If I sound a little surprised in saying that, it's because I am. I kind of thought that any new government would simply adopt the current spending plans of the old government, give themselves a bit of time to look at what they'd inherited and then put forward their plans for the future. But at the moment, we're being told that we will get financial announcements regarding the funding for national parks for a 3-year period later this year. But don't hold your breath on that. We've been told things like that pretty often in the past. I have to say it's still not great news financially, in the sense that DEFRA are what's called an unprotected department. So if there's any need to make savings across government, which there might well be, or to create funding for the priorities of any new government, DEFRA are not one of the departments that are going to be protected against cuts. But again, this is very early stages. We've not even had the election yet alone to see a proper, more detailed plan for any new government in terms of national landscapes and national parks. So let's see what comes out of that. And obviously, I'll update you with any more information at the next webinar that we have. What else have I got? Some internal stuff, if I can, coming back to that. Just to let you know that we've got the customer service excellence assessments taking place on the 23rd and 24th of July, to remind colleagues of that. So you may come across the new assessor. She'll be in and around the national park for those 2 days. Though our emphasis will be on talking and listening to the authority's customers out there. Her name is Nicola Atkins, so if you do come across her, give her a smile and a welcome. For those of you that are not familiar with that, Customer Service Excellence Award is just one of those areas whereby we get someone from outside of the organisation to look at how we are performing in a particular area. So in that regard, it's similar to the work that's undertaken under Investors in People or the auditing processes. From a personal perspective, those are really important for me, in the sense we do need to open ourselves up where we're able to external challenge and scrutiny about what we're doing as an authority, both in order to elicit improvement in those areas where we want to improve and to ensure that we don't become too insular in our ways. So CSC, Customer Service Excellence Award, taking place in late July, just so that you're aware of that. The last thing I just wanted to raise was at the annual general meeting yesterday, there was a presentation by Gary Smith on the annual report from what is now called the National Park and Management Plan Partnership. So these are all those bodies who work and operate within this national park to deliver across a range of environmental, conservation and socio-economic responsibilities. They produced an annual report on progress against the 49 objectives that we have across that range of responsibilities. If you get the chance, have a look at that report. It's a really good brief explanation of where things are going well, where they're going less well or not at the speed we would want them to, and where they're going badly, where something needs to be done to change it. And as I say, this is a report that represents all the partners who are operating in the national park. It's not a report that simply that reports on the authority's performance. But if you get a chance, have a look at that. Okay, we'll just have a go to our first speaker this afternoon. But just before doing that, can I just say it'd be really helpful if I got back from colleagues at the end of this meeting when it's still fresh in your mind, and for those who are listening later on, because this is recorded, for those who can't make it, if there are particular topics or themes or issues that you'd like to see in these sessions, then drop me or Mark Sadler a line and we'll have a look at those, because we could really do with that feedback. And similarly, if you'd like to do a brief presentation on some of the work that you're involved in within as an individual or within part of the authority, then again just drop me or Mark a line on that. So with that, I shall hand over to my new colleague and your new colleague and the new Director of Park Services, Elliott Lorimer. Elliott.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Hi. If you've not met me already, as David's introduced me, I'm Elliott Lorimer, the new Director of Parks, or relatively new Director of Park Services. I'm just going to share a presentation. Hopefully it'll work fairly easily. So if you can, so hopefully you'll all be able to see that. I can't actually see you. Hang on, let me just move you across here. Sorry about this, just getting it up. So yeah, I think you can all see, just lost my slides, sorry about this. Yeah, you can all see my slides. So thank you to David for inviting me to speak today. Just to tell you a bit about where I've come from, some of the work that I've done, and also some reflections on my first few months working in the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority. Now, it does feel a little self-indulgent to talk about myself in this way, so please bear with me. I hope I've made it as tolerable as possible. So now you might be asking yourselves, what's this first slide all about? It's certainly not of the Yorkshire Dales. Well, it's actually where it all started for me at around 15 years old, when I did work experience placement with the Scottish Borders Council Countryside Service. I love my time working there, particularly my time spent with the Southern Upland Way Ranger. So this image is of Scott's view of the River Tweed and the Eildons, through which the Southern Upland Way is routed. So I think I caught the bug early of wanting to work in a field that involved the outdoors and the countryside in some way. And just as a quick aside, I was delighted to learn earlier this week that the National Park Authority still offers these types of placements to young people, like I once was. So anyway, following school, I went on to study at Leeds, gaining a degree in environmental science, and at Aberdeen, gaining a master's in rural regional resources planning. Since then, I've worked in a variety of roles, covering over the last 25 years or so. I started off working in the voluntary sector, working on rural development and regeneration in both Scotland and in East Lancashire. That was mainly supporting rural communities, focusing on refurbishing and developing new community buildings like village halls, and establishing community transport solutions and also as well as managing the Lancashire Rural Development Fund. However, I quite quickly realised I wanted to find a way back to a more environmental or countryside role. So after travelling and volunteering and working my way around the world for a year, I found a role back in Lancashire with the County Council delivering access, recreation and conservation projects in the West Pennine Moors and South Pennines. Of note, during that time I led the development of mountain bike trails at Healy Nab and at Hurstwood, close to the Mary Townley Loop above Burnley. This was part of a watershed landscape partnership, of which I'm sure you're familiar, like the West Midland Dales Landscape Partnership, which is supported by the Heritage Fund and led by Pennine Prospects, which went on to become the South Pennines Park. I also led the establishment of the Pennine Bridleway feeder route from Bolton to Clowbridge on the Mary Townley Loop. For those involved in the development of the Hawes to Garsdale multi-user route, you might be interested to know that this project also included making a creation order. And finally, I coordinated the compilation of the data and evidence for the designation of the West Pennine Moors Site of Special Scientific Interest. This information, submitted to Natural England in 2007, led to the designation of the SSSI, wait for it, in 2016. So you can see that Natural England still like to take their time in making decisions. I'd be interested to know how this compares with the timescale for the National Park boundary extensions and designation. So on to the majority of my career to date, and some of you will be familiar with my role I had working in the Forestable and National Landscape, or Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, as was. The partnership manager role I held here was a wide-ranging one, mainly out of necessity, as a National Landscape Partnership has a modestly sized team and has much more limited resources than any national park authorities do. So day to day, the focus could move from habitat restoration one day to planning and development the next, to green social prescribing to round out the week. So there was never really a dull moment, for sure. In fact, that multitasking approach extended to all team members who had to develop a range of skills, particularly those which helped the team to secure external funds to maximise delivery of the management plan. Skills such as data and evidence gathering, fundraising, writing funding bids, and project management, monitoring and evaluation. So during my time in this role, we focused on a number of key partnership objectives, and I expect these won't differ too much from the National Parks objectives. So those covered delivering habitat restoration for climate resilience and mitigation, particularly peatland and haymeadow restoration. It also included improving access and the welcome for a more diverse range of people through arts-led events and projects, development of easy access trails and provision of trampers, outdoor learning and green social prescribing initiatives. We also work closely with tourism business in the development of sustainable tourism, via the Europark Charter process, and more recently an Eco Escapes project. We also worked hard to engage, influence and encourage farmers and landowners to adopt more environmentally sensitive farming and land management practices, in particular high nature value and regenerative farming. And finally, we focused on supporting and challenging local authorities and utility companies to adequately consider the outstanding natural beauty of the landscape in their decision making and their delivery. So all quite familiar stuff. So that's been something that I've found quite comforting in my first few months working here, is a lot of the things sound and feel familiar. So that's been really good. Another strong, if I can just move on to the next slide, another strong feature of our work in the Forest of Bowland was the holistic and collaborative approach we took to programme management and project and programme development that I encouraged and supported. The Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership, which completed in late 2023, is a really good example of this approach. It convened a partnership of public, community, business and environmental sector organisations to deliver a multi-million pound programme. Pendle Hill sits as an outlier in the south of the national landscape, above East Lancashire towns of Burnley, Nelson, Briarfield and Combe. These are some of the most disadvantaged communities in England. People from these communities, particularly of South Asian heritage, can often experience real and perceived barriers to access the national landscape right on their doorstep. So the Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership sought to address some of these barriers and inequalities by engaging people with their landscape and their local environment. The programme did, of course, deliver some of what we might consider the sort of bread and butter of landscape partnerships, such as improving access routes to the hill's summit, habitat restoration, and restoration of traditional boundaries like dry stone walls and hedgerows. However, where we felt this perhaps differed from other landscape partnerships was the way in which we tried to suffuse this more traditional delivery with some quite different elements, such as artistic and creative practice, partnered with archaeologists, ecologists, or dry stone wallers who are involved in restoration, and that went on to inspire art, poetry, music. Or another example would be the green prescribing initiatives, supporting people with mental health and social isolation issues to gain the confidence to then go on to join a regular volunteer group or become a walk leader. These are just two of the examples, and in truth the sort of web of connections made across the 15 projects in this programme, it's quite hard to convey in just a few sentences. So I'd suggest, if you're interested, come and speak to me if you want to learn more about what we did, or you can have a look at the programme website, which still exists, which is pendlehillproject.com. Finally, if I can just turn to my first few months in my new role as director, I've really enjoyed getting out and about to meet the teams, particularly obviously in park services, to find out about the fantastic work you all do. And I just wanted to offer a few reflections from those visits that I've made. The first one's really, I can see such great, the National Park Visitor Centres and Dales Countryside Museum in particular, such amazing assets to have as an authority, and one which we didn't have in the Forest of Lowland. To be able to welcome people and provide information and learning is just a fantastic thing. And it sounds like there's some great plans to redevelop and refresh, for example, the Malham Centre later this year. And I know Dales Countryside Museum are looking at developing a new project to support more exhibitions under the Going Places Arts Fund. Of course, the park management teams do great work managing and maintaining the rights of way in the park, and I've seen a lot of that. Meeting with the western and southern teams, have yet to meet the northern team and go out with them. As well as, the team do that fantastic work with rights of way, but they also fill an important community liaison role. It's clear this work is really appreciated by the residents and visitors alike. The Access and Engagement team, I've got so many exciting projects and initiatives on the go, or seem to be bubbling under. At times it feels like it's hard to keep up. And in truth, I've not had the chance to get out with one of the teams to different education, volunteering, health and wellbeing sessions just yet. But I'm really looking forward to that over the next month or two. You perhaps won't be that surprised to hear that in my first few months, there are a few of the larger park services projects and programmes which have been grabbing my attention and a fair bit of my time, such as the Coast to Coast Walk, the new Cross Keys Bridge, access to Eden at Smardale, the Aysgarth Tramper Trail, of course, Hawes to Garsdale multi-user route, and as well, and sort of allied to that is the development of a new active travel plan for the park, which is a really exciting prospect. So really, to conclude, I'd just like to offer a final reflection, if I can, returning to the holistic and collaborative approach I referred to earlier. As the authority moves to a more project-based organisation, which I know this sort of culture shift that's been talked about since I've arrived, I think this kind of approach is key to success in securing external funds to help deliver the authority's work and the objectives of the management plan. I think any project with a single or narrow interest is almost always going to lose out to one that's explored and developed opportunities to blend conservation, access, recreation, the arts, enterprise, community engagement, volunteering, learning, and climate action, to name quite a few. The prospect of developing projects and programmes like this and deliver them is what really excites me. And it's something I'm really keen to hear from all of you on how we can do more of this type of work within the authority. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Elliott. I just dropped a note in the chat for colleagues that if there are any issues or questions that you've got, you can either stick them in the chat, or we'll be, if we've got the time, doing a bit of a Q&A at the end of this. This whole session lasts about an hour. Is there anybody who's got any questions for Elliott at this point? Just raise your electronic hand if you have, and I'll pick those up. I've raised my idiot. That's me, the idiot. And I'll pick those up. So, any questions for Elliott? You know, really difficult ones that you'd like to give a new director and put him in a difficult and uncomfortable position?
I'm sure there are, but they probably don't want to do it on Teams, do they? In front of everybody.
You're just a phone call away, aren't you, Elliott? Or increasingly, you're just a VC away. Okay, thanks for that, Elliott. Just a comment from me. I'm glad you picked up on that issue at the end about cross-authority working, because the section heads have got a really important role. Ignore Gary Smith.
Yeah.
The section has got a really important role in terms of seeing those initial project ideas that might be coming up from staff or indeed outside of the organisation, and having a conversation in that environment where we can look to provide added value to a project that ordinarily in the past might have just stayed within one directorate or even one section, to just get as much out of any future initiatives as we possibly can. So really important, and it'd be really important for staff to continue to provide ideas for that forum, whether they are mad, bad or impossible. We can make a decision later on.
And some of the projects, you know, there were a few in that Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership. There were a few mad projects, let's say. So, you know, just come to me with those mad, bad or crazy ideas, and I will listen. I might not agree to them all, but do come and tell me about what you've got, thoughts you have.
Okay, thanks for that then, Elliott. Well, now you're all primed to be able to ask questions of any colleagues at the end of thank you, Rachel. At the end of any presentation, you can gear yourselves up for that. So the second presentation we've got today is from another one of our well-loved colleagues, Rachel Briggs, who's just going to talk about some of the work and the developments that are taking place at Aysgarth. Rachel?
Thank you. So for anyone that hasn't met me before, I think you probably all have, I'm Rachel Briggs. I'm the Access and Recreation Officer. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I think that's worked. Has it? Yep. Okay. Before I start, if I don't mention you by name, there have been so many people involved in this project that I just have to say a big thank you, you know, from the comms team to finance, to the rangers, to the FIPL team, to obviously to the information advisors and the volunteers. So just a big thank you. So I'm going to talk about what we're calling Accessible Aysgarth. And I'm going to split the presentation into these sections here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the DEFRA Access Fund. I'm going to go on to talking about the tramper, promotion of the site, the funding we've had from the Farming and Protected Landscapes, changing places, and then what's going to come in the future. So first of all, I'm just going to talk a bit about the DEFRA Access Fund. So back in 2022, we were fortunate to be told that all English national park authorities and AONBs, which have now been renamed National Landscapes, would receive an uplift in their core grant to be spent specifically on making protected landscapes more accessible. The funding was awarded in 2 years. The first set of funding we got at the end of 2022 to be spent by March 2023, so a very quick time scale. And then we've recently received the second half of the funding to be spent by March 2025, so a little bit longer to spend that one. So just thinking about what we spent the first year's money on, this photograph shows that we spent some of it on replacing inaccessible kissing gates to accessible two-way opening hand gates on a route in Malham to make the route wheelchair accessible. Turned it into a press release, which is always good promotion. We bought some kits for underrepresented groups to come to the national park. We contributed towards the change in place at the Dales Countryside Museum, which I'll cover in a bit. We contributed to a rights of way improvement as part of the Tees Swales project. We had a feasibility study done at Aysgarth for people to get access to the falls. Again, I'll come back to that in a bit. And we purchased a tramper, storage for the tramper, and a trailer. Takes us nicely onto the tramper. If you've never seen a tramper before, this is a tramper. This is the tramper at Aysgarth. So tramper's a brand name, and the collective term is, I always forget this, so I've written it down. They're all-terrain mobility scooters. So there's lots and lots and lots of different all-terrain mobility scooters on the market that all cater for different people with different needs. The tramper is a really good one for the visitor profile at Aysgarth because it's so easy to use. It will go over rough terrain and it will go up gradients of up to about a 1 in 4. But like I say, it's really easy to use. It's a class 3 mobility scooter, which means it can go where you can go on foot. So it can go on a footpath and it can go on open access land. And it has the capability to reach speeds of 8 miles an hour, which is really fast. However, this one's been reduced to 4 miles an hour because it's being used primarily on footpaths, and that's the legal speed limit on a footpath. So to start the project, the North York Moors National Park Authority, who've had trampers for years, came over to talk to us, information advisors and volunteers, about how the tramper booking has worked in the North York Moors. And we were won over. They were really enthusiastic. They eased all our anxieties about the project, and we all felt much better about it, I think. So the site was audited. The first thing we did, the site was audited by the charity Outdoor Mobility, and the routes to promote were identified and risk assessed. So the routes that this tramper can be used on are to go to the upper falls and to go to the viewing platform at the middle falls, and then down the track a little bit further towards the lower falls. Access the Dales. If you haven't met her before, this is Debbie North in the photograph. She's the owner of the charity, not owner, but you know what I mean. She came and she did some training with the volunteers and the staff on how to use the tramper, but also how to ask other people to use the tramper in a responsible way. So the tramper's free to use, but many visitors are opting to give a voluntary contribution to its upkeep, which is fabulous. And to date, we've had about 60 bookings, but this seems to be increasing daily at the moment, which is fab. About half of those are done through the online booking system that Access the Dales are running on our behalf. And then half are done on an ad hoc basis, whereby the staff and volunteers just get the tramper out and ask people passing by to come and use it, which is working a treat. So the feedback has been fabulous. I've just put this up. It was launched in October, but that was obviously not quite the season, so it's had its proper launch more recently. But this TripAdvisor came in October, and I think it just speaks volumes about the difference it's making to people's lives. And the other sort of general feedback we're getting is that people wouldn't have been able to join their families or enjoy the views if it wasn't for the tramper. It is absolutely making a real difference. I put this photograph in because it was last week, so it's still quite fresh. And it was an organised walk led by Access the Dales, and they used the tramper, and it was a group from Chapeltown in Leeds who came to do the tramper route. And Mabel, pictured in the photograph here, just said that she wouldn't have been able to do the walk had the tramper not been available. and it made a real difference to her, and she was just itching to come back. Incidentally, the lady to the right, Sonia, she's using a different vehicle that is part of the Access the Dales hub, and that's from the new Big Inn hub, so from Cottage in the Dales. So that was not quite as good as the tramper, but it did the job. Moving on to promotion of the site, the comms team have been busy doing all sorts of fabulous work on promoting the tramper. I'll play this video in a second, but they've also done some stuff on social media. They've done a poster, they've done a press release that got onto the BBC, which is really good. And probably other stuff that I'm forgetting, but I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and play this video for you. Can you see Access mini guides on your screen now?
Yes, we can.
Right, okay. I'm going to go from there. If you want to see the video, there isn't much left of it. You can carry on from there. Okay, so other promotion of the site. A charity called Accessible UK audited the information centre, cafe, toilets and parking earlier in the year. And the access guide they've produced will be available on our website to give visitors as much information as possible before they arrive, which is a really positive thing. It's not just about physical access requirements, but considers things like sensory impairments, neurological conditions, age, dietary requirements, all sorts of things. So that's coming soon. Okay, so I'm going to move swiftly on to the FIPL funding. I mentioned earlier that we used some of the DEFRA fund to have a feasibility study done to look at how we could improve access at Aysgarth to the falls. One of the main issues that was highlighted within that report was the tarmac footpath down to the road crossing. At the moment, the section is too steep for easy access and there are no passing places to allow for safe passing of users. And that's even more important now that we've got the tramper. At the same time, we were made aware that one of the neighbouring landowners wished to apply for funding for the purpose of visitor management and to allow for nature-sensitive farming. We worked together on a FIPL application and we as the National Park Authority took the lead and have been successful in the funding bid from FIPL for the tarmac footpath, some surfacing, some drainage and some fencing. And what this will do is it will encourage users to stick to the footpath, allowing the landowner to introduce livestock without the disturbance of people and, more importantly to him, dogs. And the breeding birds on site will also be protected from visitors and the SSSI will be allowed to recover where walkers have left the public right-of-way to avoid muddy sections. It'll create a 4-kilometre route which will be suitable for all-terrain mobility scooters and will provide fabulous views of Wensleydale, Bishopdale and Bolton Castle. And it's hoping that it will be finished by March 20, what year are we in, 24, 25. Just some not brilliant photographs, but some photographs to show you a before, just to show you that it can get a bit muddy and a bit wet. You can see Nigel's foot is in water there, so that section will be surfaced. Both of the sections that you can see here will be surfaced, and it will be a fantastic asset to the Rights of Way network. Moving on to changing places. So in 2021, the government released a pot of money, about 30 million pounds for the provision of changing place facilities. For those of you that don't know what a changing place is, they're designed so that they're completely accessible and provide sufficient space and equipment for people who are not able to use the toilet independently. The money that became available was only available to district councils, and so national park authorities weren't eligible to apply. However, John Tye worked closely with Craven and Richmondshire district councils and managed to use some of their allocated funds to create 2 new changing places in the national park. So the map shows now that we have Hawes and Grassington. Yeah, you can see Grassington. We've also got Settle, and there is one being created at the moment in Leyburn. If you bear in mind that map before Hawes, Settle and Grassington were on there, there was nothing between sort of Northallerton and Kendal. So it's a really, really important piece of work that's been done there, because it makes such a difference to people's lives. This is the changing place at the Dales Countryside Museum. Again, that's me and Debbie North, a press release. The other one will be an extension to the toilet block at Grassington in the car park. I'm just going to talk very briefly about what's coming up in the future. The work at Aysgarth, like I said, will be completed this year, if not slightly into next year. And we will also be including another tramper to enjoy the site. So there'll be 2 trampers available at Aysgarth, which is a really good thing, because often the information advisors and the volunteers are saying that they could book more than 1 hour at a time. It would be really good, hence the picture, it'd be really good to see all-terrain scooters at all national park centres. Sorry, I've just got a message. The Deaf for Access Fund will be spent this year on another exciting project, and I think Elliott mentioned it very briefly, and I'm only going to mention it very briefly as well, but at Smardale, as part of the Eden Rivers Trust National Lottery Heritage Fund. And we will also see our first sensory trail established in the Westmoreland Dales. An access hub's being created, led by the comms team, and this will be where all the fantastic work that's been done can be promoted to the audiences that need it. And I think I've spoken enough. I'm going to stop sharing and look at the chat, apparently. That's it.
Thanks, Deb. There's a question there from Elliott. Can you pick up the chat? I can read it to you if not.
Yeah, can you read it? Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Debbie Star's on the Bowland website too. Yeah.
No, the one 2 above that is the access mini guide that you displayed different to the digital accessibility hub under development with the BMW funding.
Sorry, yes, it is. So the access mini guide, they used to do access guides for sort of tourism providers that were really easy to use. I think it was through Visit England, and they stopped doing them. So they've been picked up independently by various charities, and what it will be is just an audit and a guide that will be per centre eventually. And there'll be a QR code that will be stuck on the door, so that if you arrive at the visitor centre and it's closed because it's out of hours or it's closed for the season, you'll be able to scan the QR code, and you will also be able to download the information from there. So it's really good.
Thanks, Rachel. There's another question on the chat from Suarnet. Can you see that?
Were there any other alternatives to tarmac considered? Yes, we did consider other surfaces. If Nigel was here, I would ask him a bit more about it. The one we actually wanted was a more natural surface, but no one would was able to bid for it, so we've gone for tarmac in the end, which is the current surface anyway, and it's more hardware, and the surface that's there now has been there for a long time and has stood the test of time, so we're going with that again.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Any other questions that colleagues have got? You can raise a hand or put one in the chat. Not seeing any hands raised. Oh, I've got Elliott. Elliott.
Hi, I just wanted to check there. When Sue asked that question about the tarmac, because obviously I visited the site with you last week, it was only for that initial section out of the car park. It's not for the entire route. I was just making sure that Sue didn't think it was going to be tarmac the whole way around.
Good point. Thanks, Elliott. Yeah.
Thanks, Elliott. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Okay, we've got 4 minutes left because these sessions last an hour, and we're keen to kind of keep it at that, so staff know what they're coming into. Are there any general questions or other questions that staff have got about any of the issues that have been highlighted today? Again, hand raised, I'll pick it up, or anything in the chat. Your hand down, lad. No. Great. Okay then. Well, the last point from, oh, hang on, Ruth.
Hi, sorry, I don't know if you can see me. I'm just on my way back from the Access for All session with the Forest of Bowland. Rachel, I was just wondering, is there any plan to have, you know, the sort of mechanical off-road all-terrain wheelchairs, like the Paratrekker? Is there any plan to have any of those anywhere?
We've been offered a Paratrekker actually as an addition at Aysgarth. I haven't yet spoken to the information staff about it because I'm not quite sure where it would go, but it would be used as a kind of recovery vehicle as well for the tramper. So yeah, I mean, I've looked at Paratrekkers before, and there are mountain trikes as well. There's lots of good options out there. So yeah, we have considered it.
Yeah, because I thought, you know, yeah, and maybe, you know, so that if ever we have a breakdown anywhere as well, that there's a substitute that's not the same as a tramper, but, you know, can be used while things are maintained.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Anyone else? Okay, can I just finish then by just saying and reminding staff, any feedback on this format to Mark Sadler would be appreciated if you've got any. Any ideas for future presentations would also be very helpful. And particularly helpful would be if you or if the staff within your directorate sections want staff more widely to know about any of the projects or initiatives or things that you're actually involved within the staff and would like to share it more widely. It's kind of a 15-20 minute presentation. You've seen the format today. If you've got anything on that, again, drop Mark or myself a line. So on that note, I'll give you back 2 minutes of your life and wish you all the best, and I'll see you very soon.